You're listening to the Cantina Cast, your home for thought-provoking Star Wars talk. Join Albert and Chris in breaking down the latest news, trailers, movies, TV shows, games, books, and of course, your favorite characters from a galaxy far, far away.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Cantina Cast. My name is Albert Padilla, and this is episode 647, where we finally are going to be talking about the first two episodes of Maul Shadow Lord. It's a new series that just premiered. It came on at, 2 a.m. this morning, and I had every intention of standing up to watch it, but with Easter yesterday, I passed out. I told Chris did the same thing. I think we were gung-ho about doing it, and we just didn't get a chance to because we were both too tired. But welcome to the show, Chris, of course, and how are you doing, man?
Hey, I'm doing good. I'm coming to you live from not my house,
right?
But I am here, and we're going to talk about Maul Shadow Lords. And yes, I tried. I started watching it at the stroke of 2 a.m. And then like 2 minutes in, even though it was action packed, I just started to doze. And after that first little doze, I'm like, yeah, no, I'm not going to waste my time. I'll just go to sleep and I'll catch it first thing in the morning. And I did. And man, it was something.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I'm not taking away your Star Wars card. It's a tough ask to watch, basically 2 episodes of anything at 2 a.m., especially, with everything going on holidays.
Hey, and we're not spring chickens anymore, man.
No. Nope. I'm in the oven. I've been cooked, carved, and
yes,
bones are being thrown away at this point. So, but no, hey, before we get started,
that's a good one.
Thank you guys so much for those of you that are in the live recording tonight down the stream. Thank you all so much for being here. Please feel free to say hi. Give us a shout. We'll give you guys a shout out once we get your name on the list there. I want to say thank you to all of our Patreon members. If you're not a member of Patreon, please consider supporting the show through Patreon. You can head over to cantinacast.com/Patreon, or you can head over to Patreon/The Cantina Cast. Either way will get you there. And we would appreciate any support that you can provide. $2 is where we start. We go all the way up to like $20, and there's all kinds of stuff in there. And there's a lot of shows out there. I spent some more time in the last 2 weeks just organizing things. So if people are looking for very specific content, you can go find it. If you want to see all the stuff that we've done so far on Maul Shadow Lord, we've got a nice little collection going for all of that too. So we'll continue to keep on doing more Patreon shows. We've got one tomorrow. I'll get to that in a second, but I want to say thank you to are now part of the tribe members. So that's Alex, Danny, Dante, Daz. I've got a Brad feeling, Jackson, Jacob, Josh, Mike Borda, Paisley, Paisley's with us tonight. Rita Reborn, Sharkman Dan, Uncle Leon, and Will I Am. And then our Delusions of Grandeur members. That is Now This Is Rod Racing, Steve, and Rob. Thank you guys so much for that. Tomorrow we have a Patreon show that we're going to do. We've had to delay things because of Easter and that sort of thing. But tomorrow we've got Balance of the Force. So we'll be kind of breaking that open and talking more explicitly about Balance of the Force, what it means, from different perspectives and that sort of thing. So it'll be a lot of fun. We just did a similar show where we did analysis of Is the Dark Side Stronger? That was a lot of fun. I suspect this will be the same kind of conversation. So join us for that. If you're a Patreon member, that'll be for the recording again tomorrow at 9 p.m. And then Sunday, we'll come back and have another Patreon show exclusive. And then we'll do this whole thing with Maul Shadow Lord, episodes 3 and 4 next Tuesday, or next Monday, I should say, when that launches and is released. So, okay. I think I've done all the pleasantries already. Let's get into what I want to do is let's talk about our opening thoughts on the first 2 episodes and the series. These are going to be non-spoilers. So if you're spoiler at risk and don't want to be spoiled, don't worry. We're going to try our best not to. And then we'll get into the actual breakdown and really start spilling the beans on just about everything. So, Chris, I'll turn it over to you to kind of kick us off. What did you think about, these first 2 episodes? Did it live up to your expectations, to the hype? How did you feel about things like the tone and some of the storyline, the narrative, the art direction, the animation? I know we've gone on and on about it already, but I mean, what else? There's probably more to say.
We've gushed about that.
Yeah. So what did you think? First impressions, non-spoiler first impressions.
So my non-spoiler first impressions I was very, very pleased. I thought it was amazing. There were some areas that I had some little nitpicks, nothing too major. The animation is beautiful. When it's action packed, when there's action happening, that's the best animation I've seen in a long time. Definitely the best from Lucasfilm Animation. The pro and that leads to one of my I guess little nerf pebble nitpicks, was that when it wasn't action packed, the animation was still good, but it was very similar to what we've seen in Rebels and Bad Batch and Clone Wars. It kind of like it went back to normal. But when it was action, everything was the animation was beautiful. As far as the storyline goes, I think it got off to a great start. There were a couple of inconsistencies, and I know, Albert, we talked about it before we kicked the show off, but I agreed with what you said, and we'll get into more of it later on in the show. I did have a couple issues there, but all in all, I think it's a great way to kick off this series. Maul looks fantastic. I mean, the actual character Maul, he looks fantastic. I don't think I've ever seen a character in Lucasfilm Animation look as good as Maul looked when he had that tattered cloak on coming off the ship. That is just amazing. And then even though it's only been 2 episodes, I'm invested in a lot of these characters already. And that's when you know a show has you, is when you're invested in the characters after an episode or 2. I am completely invested. I have questions, and I hope that we'll get answers to these questions as this series moves forward.
Yeah, no, and I would agree to all of that. Like it's a very, very strong start. One of the strongest starts for a Star Wars series, period, since the Disney releases. I'm willing to say that. I've got some minor things, so we'll get to those in just a second here. Let's see. As far as my non-spoiler stuff, the writing was great. It wasn't perfect and it wasn't fantastic, but it was great. It was really good. It was gripping. There was a lot of moments in here. So one of the things I want to kind of lead off with is when we first broke down that very first trailer, we said then that this very much felt like Gotham City. Just in the tone, the way the art direction was, some of the shots and the way that the setting was, holy bananas. It was like, there was a Star Wars article that came out today, by the way, and I don't know if you had a chance to read it, but they talked about how this episode or this series was inspired by Heat, the 1995 movie, which is a great movie. If you've never seen it, it's so like underrated in my opinion. I don't think people talk about that movie enough. And Heat was actually something that inspired The Dark Knight, the film with Heath Ledger. And then you look at this and it's got elements of The Dark Knight. Almost literally, there's some things that are happening that are very similar, almost parallel to what's happening in The Dark Knight. And you've got that tone of the cops and robbers, the cat and mouse chase that's going on with Heat. And I loved every bit of part of that. Like this whole Star Wars noir crime thriller thing, that it's been done in other media, Star Wars media. They've dipped their toes here and there, but they've never gone full on like they've done with this series. And I really appreciate that. Similar with like Andor and kind of what they were trying to do with that series and kind of go in that direction and hit it out of the park. It does feel like this is set up to be very, very successful in tackling the crime, cops and robbers, cat and mouse type game. So that's all there. I loved it. I loved the city. I loved all the elements of the city. Especially having read the comic book. Like, I think we'll reference the comic book quite a bit here because we did some coverage on it. If you haven't had a chance to watch that episode or listen to it, I already forgot what episode it is, but go back and you can find it there. But I think it's important. I think that context is important as these characters are developing. More on that as we get through. So the animation, yes, I mean, holy bananas. Like, again, there's just moments in there where I was taken out. Like, it's not a bad thing. Like, I wouldn't say I was taken out of the episode because I was focused on looking at the animation. Or when Maul comes into the frame, there's a moment in one of the scenes there where you can see like the very fine details on his horns. It doesn't look like it's just drawn. It looks like those horns have been etched. Like, you know what I mean? Like it's there's texture. There's more texture to some of these things that I've never seen before. It's very similar to what the Maul looked like in episode 1. And there were moments where I was just like watching that. Once I got past that, especially on my second and third viewing, I was just all in and accepting it. But at first, it is a little jarring. And again, not necessarily in a negative way, but I was so focused on the art animation, and the matte paintings were another thing that was just beautiful. The way they kind of mixed it all. Yeah. And you could tell there were so many more that I caught watching this episode that were in the trailer that we never really called out. but because they were added to more lengthy scenes and kind of stitched together with everything else going on, it was very apparent that they were using more matte paintings in the background. And I love that. I mean, it was just phenomenal to see it. So the blending of all of that is really, really good. So enjoy that. A couple more things that are non-spoiler. The music. I love the music. This is the Kiner kids doing their thing now with Dad's, Dad's done a number of stuff. Kevin Kiner. This is his son and daughter that are doing the music. And they did some great stuff. Like there are some moments in there, like especially the way it starts off, it's kind of got that eerie, I don't know how to explain the sound just yet, but the tone of that first opening scene is really great. They do get into Duel of the Fates. I mean, I wasn't the biggest fan of that.
Here and there, yeah.
But whatever. If you're somebody who's coming off of episode 1, you see Duel of Fates and you're like, oh, that's Darth Maul's song or that's Darth Maul's theme, right? And it's not at all. And it really has a completely different context and connotation as it relates to what's happening in episode 1. But I get that they would use it here. And I like that they started off with it, but they didn't continue on, right? It kind of segued into its own little piece there. So they took elements of that and repurposed it for the series to kind of use it as an introduction. Now, if it keeps popping up, I don't know how I'm going to feel about that, but I totally get why they kicked it off with Duel of Fates. I will say just overall, the music was great throughout. It just set the tone for a lot of things. And there were moments that stood out. Maybe at some point in the Patreon show or so, we can talk more about it, but I did love the music there throughout the entire series. Okay. This is where I'll get into kind of my non-spoiler negatives, if you will. I want to start with a quote here. So this is Matthew Miknovitz, who is he's the primary writer. Him and Dave Filoni were the writers on the series. He said, all you really need to understand is that this is a story about a guy who has been wronged by a bunch of people and he wants payback. So this came out on the StarWars.com article today. And I would agree, like that is really all you need to know. Like you jump into this, they grab you by the throat and drag you through that first 26 minutes of the episode 1 and do the same thing with the next 22 minutes of the episode. What I will say is I got 4 different questions from 4 different people today that are Star Wars fans. They're not the hardcore people. They don't even listen to this show, quite honestly. They just know I'm a big Star Wars person. And when I asked them, hey, what did you guys think of the episode? They all had very similar responses. And I won't get into maybe all the specifics of it, but I realized after listening to them and then going back and saying, no, that's not true. They don't provide a lot of context for some of the characters. For example, one of them asked me, who was the pink Jedi girl? And I'm like, well, that's Devin. And they're like, oh, did I miss the name Devin? I'm like, yeah, I think so. Well, I went back and watched the 2 episodes. They never say her name. They never say her name. They never say Master Daki's name, right? They never said they reference him. There's like 2 boots. They got to say his name. They did quickly mention Riley. They mentioned Lawson, Sewell, the girl, the femme fatale that we saw a little bit later that he meets up with. We have no idea who she is. They didn't give us her name. They didn't give us like where that place was. I even turned on the audio descriptions and I didn't get anything from that. And again, all of these necessarily aren't negative. And I suspect that a lot of this stuff, I just need to wait because this is more serialized than it is episodic in terms of the way the episodes are laid out. So it will come to surface, right? We will learn a lot of these things, but I'm thinking at it from a perspective when I go through the lens of someone who's like the 4 people that I spoke to had not seen a lot of this stuff, did not read the comic, did not know any of the context of what was going on with Darth Maul. They kind of just don't explain a lot of it. They just kind of pull you along, expect you just to go with it. And thankfully it's a good show, right? So thankfully you're not really thinking about that stuff. And I would say this, all 4 of those people said, yeah, I thought it was great. I can't wait to see the next episode, but they did have questions about it. And so that would be the only negative thing is that there aren't any, some of that's not there. And then just kind of to piggyback on that, and I'll let you kind of speak to those too, to kind of piggyback on that as well. What I noticed in probably my 3rd and 4th viewings of these episodes, again, I want to be very clear. I loved it. I cannot wait to see it. And it's very clear why they're doing a season 2. There were moments where I felt like I did not get to breathe with the characters. Like it was going so fast, right? The pacing of this stuff was going so fast. And they were just giving us these elements, these big beats that we had to just pick up and run with, that I didn't really get to sit down with the characters. Like, I don't know much about Devin and Daki's relationship. I don't know what motivates her. I don't know anything about her outside of that they're on the run, but I knew all of that before going into the episode. I learned nothing new about those two characters in the first two episodes. I don't know. I think the one moment that, believe it or not, what I thought was the best moment for me personally was him coming home to Riley and having that moment of the mom and, he's not available and that sort of thing. That's what I want. And maybe I'm spoiled because of Andor, because Andor did a lot of that and they did it in droves.
Yeah.
But
yep, exactly.
It felt like maybe they could have spent a little more time letting us get to know these characters a little bit more than we did. Vario was one of the characters I felt like they did a great job with. Like, we knew a lot about him because he was so involved, and we got to hear, he was alluding to some of the stuff that had happened in the past and that sort of thing. But so some of the characters I just really didn't know. Like, I felt like I didn't really get a good sense of, who they were, what they were doing. And I said that we were going to do no spoilers. And I think I may have spoiled some things, but depending on how sensitive you are, maybe there's not any spoilers there. So that would be the only negative thing that I would say. Like, you felt like you really had to go read StarWars.com after the episode came out to kind of understand some of the things. It felt like you had to have read the comics and you had to have really kept up with what everything Maul has been going through and the Pikes and that sort of thing to really kind of feel like, oh, I know exactly where we are. But if you didn't, I think they did enough here to really keep you guys hooked and enjoy it. So I know that's a whole lot, but do you want to add anything to that? And again, we're trying to be spoiler free here in terms of like the narrative.
No, I mean, I had that feeling too, but the key is like I mentioned previously. Yeah, we may not have caught the names. They may not have mentioned the names of certain characters. Devin being one, Master Diodaki the other one, and we know that because we've read all of the magazine articles, all of the website articles. We looked in IMDb to see, who the voice actors were, who the producers were. We know all that stuff because that's what we do as big time Star Wars fans. But if you watch like a episode of Law and Order or SVU or something like that, you're not going to know, like, it's always a new story and you're not going to know everyone's name until like halfway through the episode itself. So I can give them some grace. I would think that they're setting us up for, all these introductions. And I think, again, this is real. I don't consider it a spoiler, but I think this episode was the episode that set up potentially, why Maul's doing what he's doing when it comes to his revenge tour. And then I'm sure everything else will get fleshed out as far as like other relationships between characters and like, their motivations and whatnot. The only, like I said, the little nitpicky things, like I said, it seemed like animation kind of went back to normal when it wasn't any serious action scenes, which there weren't that many, because like you said, when the show started, it grabs you by the throat and then it doesn't let you go, which is exactly what Filoni and Sam Witwer has said, is that it's nonstop action, and they were not lying. It actually was nonstop action, which is good. I enjoyed that. Yeah. The only other thing in this particular character, I don't know, would we consider this a spoiler? I mean, it was they announced the character that was there. They announced who was voicing this character. I had a little tiny issue with a particular character, and that's the character of Spybot, who they said, hey, this particular droid is going to be like kind of a comic relief type stuff, so I went into that and I expected that. However, I thought in certain instances it kind of went a little too far. But I like the attitude of the droid. I like the type of droid it is, voiced by, if you're a Star Wars fan, David Collins, voiced by David Collins. But I thought in certain areas, it just went a little bit too, it was a little too silly. But maybe that's what they thought it was needed for this type of show, because there are a lot of like super serious tones and super serious scenes in these first two episodes. And maybe they threw in some Spybot silliness to kind of like bring the tone down a little bit, because it is animation. That's really all my nitpicks I have on the show so far. And I, like you, they're not really that significant at all. And I wish it was already next Monday so that we could watch episodes 3 and 4.
No, for sure. So great start. Hopefully, anybody listening, watching this now has already seen those episodes, because we're going to get into the spoilers. And feel free to reach out to us, comment us if you think I'm crazy or don't agree. That's totally fine. I don't mind that at all. In fact, that was as I was putting the show notes together, I'm like, am I being too critical about this? Am I being, if it wasn't for like us, the people that reached out, I don't think I would have even considered it. Right. I hadn't even considered it myself personally, because I was like, oh yeah, this all makes complete sense. One Up versus CPU.
I think.
Oh, just real quick in the comments. Yeah, One Up versus CPUs. I didn't even know the planet, what the planet was until I looked it up. Yeah, they never said Janix. Right. Or never, there was no, subtitles or captions and stuff. And Star Wars never had them before Disney came in. Let's just be clear. But I think they make sense. In this day and age, it feels like some of this stuff does need to happen. I think if you followed our show and watched those episodes, we talked about it, especially during the comic breakdown and the trailer breakdowns. We've shared it. But again, somebody coming in, they probably thought that was Coruscant, at times, because what else are they supposed to think,
So, and speaking of the comic, I think the next episode of the next issue of the comic comes out on Wednesday.
Yeah, we got it today, as a matter of fact. I haven't sent it over to you yet. So yeah, we got to read that to get caught up. But yeah, we'll have to do that. The breakdown of that comic here. Maybe we'll do that for the Patreon show next week. Okay, so let's get into all of the spoiler stuff now. So we're going to start with the very first episode, Dark Revenge, 30 minutes. And 30 minutes. So maybe just to kind of put a cap on what I was talking about earlier, moving too fast, not providing context. I think some of that could have been remedied had they just maybe given us like 5 more minutes, right? Made this a 35-minute episode and made the other one a 26-minute episode instead of 30. And then what was the other one? And 22. So it's 30 and 22 minutes after you remove all the beginning and ending stuff, right? So had they just given us a little bit more time, I think we would have been able to get some of that answered. And it felt like it wouldn't have felt as maybe rushed. I don't know if that's the best word, but that's how it felt for me. So 30 minutes anyways, Dark Revenge. We open up with the banking district. Janix looks, again, amazing, as we've already talked about, very much like Gotham. By the way, that was confirmed today. When you go to StarWars.com, there's an article that's in there. Who wrote that article? I think it's Kristen Baver who did it. But anyways, she wrote an article and it's got like some Easter eggs and stuff in there. And they did mention that Gotham City was a huge influence for this thing. So we called it way back then. So kudos to us and everybody else.
Yep, definitely.
But yeah, I like the credit heist. It was a great way to kind of kick things off. I think a lot of the speculation that we did during the trailer breakdown was pretty spot on in terms of what was going on.
Right.
I think it was maybe obvious, but we'll give ourselves credit for that one too. I liked Spybot. So I get what you're saying, because there were moments in there where it did feel a little more too comical given the tone of everything else going on. And you got to wonder, does Darth Maul have a silly side? Does he have a comical side that he would be like, hey, you're the droid for me? Like, it feels like if I remove my biasness away from me, I would think that he would be going after a droid that's more killer and, more serious and not what we got. That said, I do like Spybot, and I want to see Spybot versus Chopper. Like, I think that would be the ultimate showdown in terms of like snarkiness,
killer droids.
and killer droids, and just see who wins in that
war crimes
battle royale between those two. And there were moments in there where like it did sound like Chopper, especially with he was making noises and stuff.
Yep.
I mean, we could clearly hear what he was saying more audibly than Chopper does. So I don't know. Put David Collins and Dave Filoni, who are the voices for each of those droids, put them together and get a cage match going on with the two. But I don't. So I didn't mind it, but I totally get what you're saying. There were moments that it was a little too comical, and I would assume that's mostly because they needed some kind of levity compared, with everything else that was going on. They needed to lighten up the mood a little bit.
Right. And to go back to the opening scene of the first episode, it wasn't shot for shot, but you could tell that it was heavily, if not completely, inspired by the beginning of The Dark Knight. The bank heist and whatnot with the cables and everything, absolutely inspired by the beginning of The Dark Knight. Back to Spybot. He reminds me, if you're a Gen X person like me, and you watch the Transformers cartoon in the 80s, Spybot reminds me a lot of Laserbeak.
Yes.
If you remember, Laserbeak, Soundwaves cassette that turns into a eagle or hawk or a death talon bird. I don't know, whatever you want. But Megatron trusts him to get his job done completely. He probably trusts Laserbeak the most out of all of the Decepticons. He even says it in Transformers, the movies, like, you know, unlike my other Decepticons, you never fail me. I think that Spybot is Maul's Laserbeak. Well, yeah, he may be a little bit goofy and try to say things that are funny to a certain extent, but he's effective, and that's why Maul keeps him around. Not necessarily for his personality, but for the fact that he's effective. And we saw he was absolutely effective in doing what he needed to do, doing his job, and he just threw quips, here and there. The one quip that really got me saying, really, is when he said "booyah." I'm like, do you read Teen Titans comics or something? Is that where you got the term "booyah"?
No, it wasn't
in the Star
booyah.
Wars
It was
galaxy?
boosky doo.
No, he said "booyah."
Oh, really? I didn't hear that. If he did,
yes, he said "booyah." Yeah, no, boosky doo I could live with, but he said I went back and I saw the captions, and the captions said "booyah."
Okay, yeah.
So I'm like, yeah, no. That's
they broke one of the rules there for you, huh?
Exactly. It's like, where's Cyborg? That's what I was looking for. But that kind of, it was just kind of silly. But as far as being an effective droid, doing what Maul needed him to do, yes, perfectly. I think he fits in with the gang 100%. And I'm looking forward to more shenanigans with Spybot.
Yeah. Did you see that? I put that in the show notes. It literally says, we're talking about Spybot. It says, reminds me of a Transformer companion. Because that's exactly where my mind went, is when I saw him, it was like, oh, he's just a transforming cassette, only he's a little, probe disc or whatever the heck he was.
Probe droid
thing.
Little thing, Yeah, that's what he is. Yeah.
But yeah, that's a great comparison of like a Laserbeak, more like maybe like Rumble's attitude, right? But more committed and loyal, like Laserbeak.
Right. And Laserbeak, again, he'd get his stuff done, and that's why he stayed on Megatron's good side. And I'm sure that's why Spybot hasn't had a lightsaber through the head, is because he does what he needs to do for Maul.
Yeah, and Alex just came in with Rumble as well. So great minds think alike. In the chat, Paisley had asked, do you know who voices Lawson's voice? That is Wagner Moura. He's a Brazilian actor. I haven't seen Narcos. I know people have loved him in Narcos, and I know you had mentioned, I think, a couple of other things he's been in recently that maybe you saw. Was that right?
No, I didn't mention that. I knew he was in Narcos, and the reason why I brought that up is because when we met Diego Luna, we talked about Narcos Mexico, and that kind of triggered that he was in Narcos. But no, when I first heard his voice, I thought he was the guy that is on the Lincoln Lawyer, because they have the same type of dialect as they speak English. I don't know the ethnicity of the guy on the Lincoln Lawyer, but he sounds so much like him. But yeah, apparently this gentleman is a huge star in Brazil. So, that's one of the things I like about Filoni, is that he's able to pick these people to come and voice these characters. And we've never seen them before. We've never heard them before. But when we hear their voice, we're like, yes, that is the voice of that character. So Lawson, is that gentleman's voice, and that's one of the uncanny skills that Filoni has, is he's able to pick the right person for each character's voice.
Yeah. Let's get back to kind of what's going on here. So we've got the credit heist. We've got Spybot, who kind of partially disables the last patrol speeder that's chasing them. They land, and we get into the fight between the two. They tell them they need to surrender, and Rook's like, oh yeah, I guess we're gonna have to surrender, because behind them is, of course, Darth Maul. And a lot of that footage we did see in the trailer. They used a lot of that. So it wasn't really anything new, but it didn't take away from the moment. Like, it was just as suspenseful, and it was just as crazy to watch Darth Maul come down with that the lightsaber there at the very end and cut to the main title. So it was a great little way to kind of get everybody up to speed and refamiliarize with who Darth Maul and how sinister he is. We talked about the music already. Again, I don't have a problem with that. I know I've seen some people, some people had some feedback after the trailer release and they played it. And now they're kind of doubling down on that and saying it's, shouldn't have been used. I don't really care as long as it maybe doesn't come up again. And I think the Kiner brother and sisters, I think the Kiners have done enough to kind of change it up so it doesn't feel like it's the exact same song. So I'm fine with it. All right. So we get over to the streets of Janix next. And this is our first introduction to Devin and Master Daki. Again, two names that don't come up in the episode. We've talked about them enough, so you probably should know who they are at this point. And they sense something's going on, and this is that whole thing with Kenobi where the Jedi just can't help themselves, right? She feels like hope. There's people and there's danger. There's something going down. She feels a presence in the Force, a call to go help people, and she wants to execute on that. Where Daki's like, no, we can't. We can't do that. That's not who we are anymore. We've got to pull that back. We've got to rein it in because they are truly in hiding. I had a question too about that. Like, again, not feedback as much as it is just an open question of like why they decided to hide and be beggars. You know what I mean? Like you think about like Kenobi, right? What did Kenobi do? He went to a planet, he got a job, he tried to blend in, try to just be normal and kind of go under the radar. I mean, I guess you could argue that being beggars or being, living out in the streets is one way to hide in plain sight, but it is, I'd love to know why they chose to do that versus, integrate into society. They're on Janix and really kind of make their past, their lives disappear rather than stand out as someone who's always on the streets and getting lots of face attention. You know what I mean? So whatever. But yeah, they're begging. She's tired. I got to see Devon's frustration more. Like she already came out of the gates with some angst when she was like saying that she was tired of begging. Like you can tell she's, not happy with, of course, what happened with Order 66, but maybe the same living conditions. Maybe she has the same question that I have to her master is like, why are we doing this? Why are we hanging out here on the streets where we can't do anything and we see everything that's going on around us? And, maybe we should be somewhere else. I can see that frustration. I say that because that's probably going to play into what Darth Maul, right? He's probably going to he's keying in on that. He's going to feel that. He's going to use that to manipulate her later down the road. As they're begging, we got Ichuta, which I thought was funny as heck, because we haven't heard that in quite a while, I guess. And then Devon is caught stealing. I also read they were going to use the fruit from Rebels for that scene, but it was too big. And so they had to kind of come up with a new fruit. So that was kind of an interesting little trivia thing. But nonetheless, she gets arrested for stealing and turns over her robes and says, I'm going to go with them because, and he tries, Master Daki just tries to play it off like, oh, she made a mistake. She's a kid kind of thing. And, the droid's like, no, we got to arrest her. And so they take her down and book her, if you will.
That you're right. That's the start of the angst. And as soon as I saw her, the animators did a great job of just showing her facial features and showing her body language of how, she's kind of done living that life. She notices her master is hungry, needs food, and wants to just utilize her skills to say, hey, let's get some food. They won't miss it. Now, obviously, no one should condone stealing and whatnot, but Master Daki wants to be on the straight and narrow, and it's like, hey, it's nothing. There's nothing wrong with relying on the help of strangers, but then he just gets, he gets dissed immediately with the Ichuta from that person or that being, whatever it is, alien walking by. So, you notice her angst right away. And of course, we all know what that opens the door for. And so I was like, yeah, they're really setting her up as somebody who wants to try to do the right thing, but in doing the right thing, it's led her to this life. And so I'm curious to see if this whole potential, again, we don't know yet, but this whole potential transformation into Maul's apprentice. I'm not going to go all out and say it's going to be Darth Talon, but could potentially be Maul's apprentice. I'm curious to see how tragic that's going to play out, because obviously we know she comes from the Jedi Order. We know that she would inherently have a good heart, but when you're pushed to the limit, you'll do things to try to get out of your situation. And I think that's what Maul, those are the heartstrings that Maul is going to pull on to try to pull her to his side. But yeah, there's just so many questions around that dynamic between Master Daki and Devon that I'm hoping we get some more elaboration on that relationship in the future.
Yeah, I think we will, especially given, that she's now released, I guess, or she's gotten away from Maul. I suspect she's going to run back to him. Just quickly, when I was watching that scene with Master Diodaki and he says, that they don't want to steal and they need to rely on the people there. It's, we've talked about this on the show many times where there's so many ways that you could parallel the Force to, faith in a God and Christianity at times. And there was always saying, my mom would always say is, God provides. And there's examples where there are certain Jedi out there that believe the Force provides, right? They're going to put their trust and faith in the Force, and whatever happens is the will of the Force. And so for him, that may be it, right? It's just that's the nature of things, and what will happen, and they just have to put their trust in the Force, and it will provide. Whether that's even if it means they have to beg for food and ask other people for that kind of help and support. So we go back to the scene of the crime now. So we've got Devin Lawson and Two Boots. So this is our first formal introduction to those two characters. I loved everything about their dynamic. It feels very genuine. It doesn't feel as like, whereas K2 was so sarcastic and, edgy, Two Boots feels like more of like a really good best friend almost, right? Like the way they talk and interact.
I was going to say that.
Yeah, it was really good. So I love the dynamic between those two. I wouldn't even know he was a droid if they hadn't said anything, just the way his mannerisms was. And that really kind of culminates. I think it's in this first episode where he goes and grabs the coffee cup and, they're having coffee and he says like, I just do this because of you. Like, because that's what he does, right? He's supporting his buddy and his addiction to coffee or calf.
Exactly. The calf. I thought that was one of the best scenes in that whole episode is like, I can't drink this, but I'm doing it because, so I can be here with you. I thought that was great. But he's very proper. He is very proper, and you could tell he's very by the book. And I'm sure we'll get into that particular situation as we're discussing the episode. But he's very by the book. And when Lawson goes off script, he makes sure to tell him that, yay, this is not by the book. And Lawson's like, hey, you have to trust me. And Two Boots does. Yeah.
And we got a sense of both of those things in the comic book, right? We haven't talked about Lawson on this episode, at least in terms of like his character from the comic, but he's played up in the comic book as being someone who doesn't necessarily follow the rules. Like he's going to bend the rules to get what he needs to accomplish the mission. Not necessarily, like, it doesn't feel like it's necessarily going to be in a, evil way or that kind of thing, but if he's got to like circumvent the rules for a little bit, or break a couple eggs if he needs to, he probably will do that. And that seems very consistent with what we got here. Now, we don't know where that comic book goes just yet because we have only got two issues technically at this point. But going back to the comic, I can't wait to read more about the comic because I think we're going to get more of their relationship, right? I talked about how it was moving so fast, and yet we had that one little moment of calf where I got to see the two characters. I really loved it. I don't know that we're going to get so many of those moments, especially as the pacing picks up and things become more intense. But we've got the comic book, and I'm looking forward to reading more about those two characters and their relationship and the dynamic that they have, because I really enjoyed all the moments and scenes that they had together. We learned that Nico Demas was the one that was hit. His bank was hit, or his treasure troves were hit. He's got his own bank, of course. The supervisor droid was missing. When they said that supervisor droid was missing, when we did the trailer breakdown and we talked about the protocol droid head on the table, I'm like, oh, that's him. Yeah. That's going to be the one. Sure enough, that turned out to be the case. But I was like, how did they get that droid head on that table? And now that was the answer right then and there. And they suspect that Luti Vario is behind it, who was a great character. Like, I really enjoyed everything about that character. Even the stuff that he's saying, like, as the doors are closing, he's got these little lines you can just barely audibly hear him say off screen. It just continues to fill out that character a lot more. And I forget the guy who did the voice, but he's perfect. I loved everything about it. Was it something Neopopoulos, or what was that guy's name that did his voice? I don't remember now. But it doesn't matter.
I don't remember.
Yeah. But Lawson ends that whole scene by saying, look, this doesn't look like the typical usual suspects here on Janix. It's too clean. Like, this looks like something else, and somebody much more polished and methodical. And of course, we know that's, of course, Maul. So we cut over to Demas and his outrage. He's really upset that he's been hit, that he wants answers. He wants to know who took all his loot. He suspects that it's Vario as well. And so he calls his men to pull a meeting together for him and Vario to meet in some kind of a neutral space. And then Spybot, who's been watching all over this, he sees that Demas is mad, and this is exactly what Maul wants, right? He's trying to pit these two guys together so they can have interstrife, break them down from the inside so he can kind of jump in and take over. And then we get him leaving with Bushkadoo, which I thought was kind of cool the way he
I could live with Bushkadoo.
Yeah. Just not Booyah Kasha or whatever.
Not Booyah.
Booyah, that's what it was.
Booyah. Booyakasha. Oh my gosh.
No, I think that's turtles, right? Maybe not. I don't know. All right, I'm out of my element at this point. So we go back to so then we get to Maul's headquarters, which is our first time with Maul there, and it's our actually first scene. We're actually first seeing Maul outside of his little introduction there. He's sitting there, he's meditating, and he's having yet a quote another vision. So that was interesting. A little that he's been having multiple visions of what I assume is Devin. But if you watched our final hype show, I've got a totally whacked out theory. So I'm like, okay, maybe he's thinking about that person. That's not true. Or it is, but I'm just kidding, sort of. But he's seen Devin before, right? He says the one I seek is here, and Rook asks him an apprentice, like because he's had this vision before. He doesn't say yes. He says I see them clearly or clearer the closer I get. Now we have every reason to believe that vision is her because by the end of it, I think they pretty much secure that. But, we also learned that Maul is, the plan's going well. He's trying to get these guys to fight each other. And then Rook asks a question about the intent. Like, why are you doing this? Why are we getting involved in the inner struggles or fighting or whatever with these low life kind of criminal people? We're much bigger than this kind of thing. I want to read this quote because I thought it was interesting. It kind of does provide some context as to what's going on. He says, as the Empire has risen, we have all been made to suffer. Even the once mighty Jedi have fallen, but there are many who have prospered from my misfortune. The Pikes, Crimson Dawn, Vario, soon they will all pay, beginning with Demas. So, time out. So he's saying that he's had misfortune and that people have kind of jumped in because of his misfortune. That to me, that storyline, although it's not important in the context of this series, that is what's happening in the comic, right? We're going to see exactly what happened, why he feels Vario double-crossed him and Demas double-crossed him. We get some context of that later when Vario is kind of being held at by Maul, right? I think he's got him at telling him that you betrayed me and that sort of thing, and you're going to have to pay the price now. All of that happens in the comic. So at some point he did come in here, he did rise to power and lost it all, and people jumped in and took advantage of that. So we'll see how that continues to evolve in the comic book. I don't know that they'll reference it ever again at this point because it's not necessarily into the context of what's happening, because this is his new chapter and this is the aftermath, which is his revenge, which is very on point for Darth Maul, of course. So yeah, it's interesting to see that they're making reference to that as well. But then he also says, look, I don't want to be in the forefront. I want to remain in the shadows for now, right? I don't want to just go in and start busting heads and that kind of sort of thing. And he wants to see what Demas's next move is. And that's when he decides to interrogate the whatever bank droid. And, they're laughing at it. And then, of course, the head gets cut off and sent over in the next scene here, or next couple scenes. Okay, I'm going to keep rolling here. We then go over to the police headquarters. And then this is where Devin is detained. She goes over to Lawson's desk. She asks, is that your son? I said that Riley, again, going back to my theory about what was going to go on with Riley is kind of way out there. But I think it is important to note, it does feel like it is going to play there's something more to Riley here. It may not be what I said it was going to be as far as theory goes, but it does feel like he is going to play a heavier, more important role, at least in regards to Lawson and that relationship and the strife and kind of the struggle that's going on there, right? So I do like that because not only did she bring it up here, but then we get that scene a little bit later.
Yep.
And so they're really trying to interrogate her, and they're telling her like, hey, you don't have an ID. She doesn't want to give them a name, which I thought was interesting that she wouldn't, but I guess, she could have made up anything. Every other Jedi made up a name. Right. Ahsoka did, Kenobi did. But she doesn't want to give her name. She doesn't have any ID. And so they're going to have to process her and put her in the cell for the night. Two Boots then opens up some kind of a holo that he got from one of the droids. We see that picture of Maul. We get the reference to the laser sword, and that Lawson says, look, I haven't seen anybody like this since the Clone Wars. So he's very well aware, was a part of the Clone Wars when that happened. I don't know what we know. He played a role in that time as a bounty hunter. They don't mention that in the TV series, but in the comic, we learned his past life was a bounty hunter. So he might have been involved in the Clone Wars to some extent, but he definitely recognizes the laser sword, and he understands that is some person that is force sensitive, right? Or maybe not. I don't know. We'll get to that when he finally meets Daki here in a little bit. But the cool thing was when they scanned his face, right? You could see the little image going around, scan his face. We learned that the ISB has put out some kind of a blocker that says, look, if you see this particular face pattern, contact us immediately. So Palpatine hasn't given up the search for Maul. They know that he's still likely out there since there's no body. No body, then he's still alive, is always the assumption. But yeah, and this is where Two Boots is like, hey, we've got to call this in. We need to do the right thing.
Exactly.
We need to follow protocol. And Lawson's like, no, we're not doing that because all it's going to do is complicate things. The Empire is going to show up. They're going to take over. And he's not ready to give up on that. He wants to get to the bottom of this on his own and make this a local effort versus a galactic effort, if you will, or imperial effort.
Exactly. And right, exactly. A couple of I guess my thoughts on the scene at the police headquarters is that again we're seeing a lot of Devon's personality, very defiant. Not necessarily, maybe she wants to lay low, so she's not even giving Lawson any type of information because she wants to stay completely under the radar. But just how defiant she was, like, not acknowledging anything. They're saying, the scowl on her face. Every time they try to escort her, she's pulling her arm away. It's just, she has a lot of, I hate to use this term because it's been used a lot in Star Wars for these types. She has a lot of anger in her. You could see that already. And we all know where anger leads. I'm curious to see how she evolves with that anger, all that anger she's holding inside of her. And then, the point about Lawson's son. And I do think it's going to play a part here. And the fact that, Lawson wants nothing to do with the Empire. He makes mentions a couple times that, if we reach out to the ISB, the Empire is going to come out here and they're going to lock down this planet. And that's not something that they want. So, Lawson's trying to keep Two Boots at bay. I think their dynamic there is when they keep going back and forth about how, Two Boots saying, hey, this is the protocol. This is what we need to do. And Lawson's like, no, you need to trust me. I thought that was very well written. I thought the voice actors did a great job working together to make that scene, pull that scene off. I'm very impressed with that. And that's easily one of the best things about that particular episode.
Like, yeah, I would agree. Like their moments, all of their moments are really great, for sure. So we move on to Demas and Vario. So this is the actual meetup. Demas thinks that Vario did it. Vario says he didn't know, but he knows that this only could have been done by one person. And you can see it on his face. He's talking about Maul, and you can almost see it on Vario says that, but you can almost see on Demas's face, like, oh crap, like if he's back, we're in trouble, kind of thing. That's when the droid head shows up, and it turns into kind of like initially a Mexican standoff, and then it turns into just a good old blaster gunfight that takes place. Lawson and Two Boots, they kind of get report that that's going on, so they head out. That's when they have the little calf moment there, and then Vario kills Demas, which I wasn't expecting that, but I get why he did it. He said, he tried to kill him. He tried to kill him first, so he took the opportunity to shoot him in the back. I love his little exosuit. That was a pretty cool little gimmick that he did, and it seems very functional. We see that especially later on when they're kind of running through the streets. He's got all kinds of gadgets and stuff on it too, so very cool use of that. I don't think we've seen it. Reminded me of like IG-11 and Grogu, right, in The Mandalorian. Something very similar to that. Okay. So Demas is trying to get away. He gets out of there into a little speeder, and he's immediately pursued by Rook, Scorn, Icarus, Maul's team. They eventually do stop him, and that's when we kind of see some of the moments here with his that whole sequence is, we're not going to get into every moment there, but really done well. I love that whole fighting, the kind of where they're going through the streets, similar to, there were scenes that almost felt like they were lifted right out of The Dark Knight, right? When they're chasing him, when he's got the bazooka, and in the subway area or whatever it was. Yeah,
when the Joker's trying to get Harvey Dent.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. Very similar to all of that. So again, more of the inspiration there from The Dark Knight, but Vario's almost killed by, I think it's Scorn, but he's saved by Lawson and Two Boots, who show up and they take off. So we then learn about Maul's plan. So the plan is now to go attack the police headquarters to go after Vario, since Vario's being held there. Rook says that it isn't worth the risk, right? Because now they're going to expose themselves if they go waltzing into a police station and to get Varya out there, they may attract the attention of the Empire. And that's not what they don't want this right now either, right? She doesn't feel like that. Maul ultimately wants it. He wants the Empire to come out. He wants to be able to fight them. He wants to take on and get his revenge for Palpatine. He just doesn't have the army to do it yet, right? He doesn't have the forces to do it.
Right.
But Maul insists. Go ahead.
No, there was a scene in between these two where I think it was Spybot gets a good look at Lawson's face. And, he shows it to, Maul and Rook, and Maul takes like a good look. And the look how it looked like to me is like, yeah, I've seen this guy before. And I think that I want to say that they may have a past that hasn't been exposed yet, but the way that Maul looks at the enhanced and the zoomed in photo of Lawson, he kind of gives it a good stare at like, hey, I think I know this guy. And then, we get to the, I'll just bring it out now because I know we're going to get to the pack where they come in to try to take Vario out of the headquarters. Maul spares his life. He comes out and essentially knocks him out. He spares his life and just kind of walks away. So that makes me think there's something there that we don't know. And I'm excited and curious, like for all the plot points of this show to see where that goes.
Well, put your tinfoil hat theory or tinfoil hat on, because this is going to play into my theory now. So yes. So what I've been joking about or teasing about is when we had the last Final Hype show, I theorized that he would go after Devin, and we're led to believe that she would become the apprentice when really it's going to be Riley. And I was like, I don't know how we get there, but that would be. And again, this is our Razor Crest moment. So it's something that's so far out there that no one could predict it. I said that. But as I'm watching this, I'm trying to make everything line up, and I'm running through mental gymnastics to make this happen and will it into existence. And so when I saw him like focused in on that, it's because, and this is me just again playing with my own theory here, it's because maybe he saw him in the vision. He's had visions of Lawson and knows that whatever is going to happen, he plays an integral role. So he can't kill him in that moment when he sees him. So that's why he just punches him and knocks him out and says, okay, right, I'll see him again, but I can't take him out. Otherwise, I'm never going to get my apprentice, which is Riley, his son. Okay.
And here's the thing about Riley is they kind of give an inclination. They don't say it outright that he's a good athlete. In because they talk about going to a game,
shock ball,
like watching him play
shock. It came up in the comic, but not in the TV series.
Not in the TV show, but they give inclination that he's a good athlete. Wasn't Anakin Skywalker like a really good pod racer?
Yeah,
and he had those skills, so he's gifted. So yeah, maybe your theory will grow some legs.
I'll bring you on to this theory before it all kind of comes crashing down. Don't worry.
Yes. So let's move forward. Okay. But I was like, man, he must be the Maul Shadow Lord's whisper, because the pieces are falling into place. Yeah. Maybe not on purpose, but it seems like they are. But yeah, let's keep going. Yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate that. You're a good friend. Okay, so let's see. So we were talking about the attack on the headquarters, right? So they decided to go in. He says that his actions serve a greater purpose and that events are falling into place. And so again, coming back to reality, he's likely talking about the fact that he knows that Devin's there, or at least he senses that Devin's there, because he does. Interestingly enough, he goes right past her. He doesn't even give her a glance into her cell when he goes to talk to Vario, right? We'll get to that in a second, but we go back to the police headquarters. Lawson's interrogating Vario. Lawson doesn't know about the Shadow Collective, which was surprising to me that he wasn't aware of that. So I guess that doesn't come up in the comic. I don't know. Well, I guess it can't, because he would have been keen on what that was.
He would have known. Yeah.
So we'll see. We don't. In that first issue of the comic literally ends with it's the last jet, or sorry, it's the Force Awakens all over again, because Maul doesn't show up to the very last panel page, if you will, and so we don't know what exactly is going on with Maul. It's everything from the perspective of Lawson, Two Boots, and the rest of the group there. But yeah, so they lock him up. They put him in that cell conveniently right across the hallway from Devin. I like when he said, what's it supposed to mean? When he said this cell wasn't his style, because it was too small. And he was like, oh, it's fine for you. And he's like, hey, he was getting offended. Well, it's funny because when Maul imprisons him, he puts him in a huge cell, but his conditions are worse, arguably. So I think that was kind of cool.
They're a lot worse.
Yeah. They mentioned that they've identified 2 other Zabraks that are not Maul. And then Two Boots brings up the whole protocol thing again about looking, we should be contacting the Empire. This is starting to get kind of hairy. And Lawson's like, no, we're not ready to do that yet. So we get to the prison break, which is kind of what this whole episode culminates in. Spybot takes out the cameras, nothing to see. Some of the stuff he says is really cool. Then the level 8 is attacked. That's the same area where Devin and Vario are being stored or held captive. Spybot he takes over the station. He's able to kind of hack into that. So he's kind of like this slicer droid as well. So he's able to kind of hack into that. I did like that little fight that they were having between Two Boots and
the little that slicing fight between Two Boots and Spybot. Yeah, I like that. That
was cool. I like that.
He's like, yeah.
The police units, they head out to show up to go find him. And this is where I guess the hunters become the hunted. In a ways, it was very much like Aliens or Terminator, where they're going through the different, they're going through the hallways. And we talked about this during the trailer breakdown. But again, a lot of these moments we had already seen, but the way they were finally all stitched together in the final product was really great. But we got to see Scorn and Icarus, Maul having moments where he's taking different teams out, responding to them. It was really good. And then, through all of this, we haven't really mentioned this, but there are moments in there where we kind of cut over to Master Daki. And one of the ones is happening right here where he almost has this like sense of dread. He can feel that something is about to happen. Something's going to churn, right? Some kind of disturbance in the Force, because he is connected to his Padawan, right? We know the connection of the Padawan and Master. He's probably feeling something there. But he senses something that's going on. So I suspect that's because Maul is injured. Maybe he feels the presence of Maul, the dark side, suddenly there on Janix in a way that he hasn't felt, or the fact that dark side presence is now closer to his Padawan. And so he decides that he needs to get up and go take action. Right. And that'll play out here in the second episode. But yeah, we talked about the Maul and Lawson moment where he didn't kill him, kind of punch him in the face. If it's not my cockamania theory, I'm with you. Like there's got to be a reason why he wouldn't have done that. And I don't think it's just because, this is animated and they wouldn't have shown him kill him. I mean, they had Maul cut somebody in half, and they did it in a way where you kind of don't see it all happen, but it's there and you know exactly what happened, right? The violence was extreme.
Exactly.
There are ways they could have done this. They could have shown, Lawson on the side, just Maul walking up to him and then cut to the back of the pillar where you can see Maul and him stabbing the lightsaber and it kind of coming at you out the other end of that pillar. And that Lawson's dead, but they didn't do that. So why? No. Right. So
why exactly? Yeah. Why?
Yeah. So we'll see where that goes. And then when Maul finally shows up, he's threatening Vario for what he did. He says, you had to abandon your oath to me, or was it greed and fear that withdrew your ships and weapons when I needed them most? So again, this is something that there's some history here where Vario turned his back on him and left him for dead, essentially. And this is Maul's revenge. Vario uses the leverage of knowing where Krim is. So Krim Maga, I forget what it is. He's the Pike leader that we saw in, what was that in? Was that in the Bad Batch? I forget now. I forget where he was. Maybe it was Clone Wars.
Yeah, I don't know. I think wasn't it Clone Wars?
I don't know. He's been introduced before. Yeah. I just couldn't remember.
He's been around, yeah.
But yeah, he's the leader of the Pikes. And so Maul sees that and is like, okay, I'll spare your life kind of thing. So they take him alive. That's when he turns over to Devin's cell for the first time. That whole, we talked about the symbolism of Maul's shadow suddenly consuming Devin, right? Very symbolic there in terms of what's going to happen. He opens up her cell and she says Maul. So she knows who he is. She's aware of who he is and who he was. Whether that was Maul, the Jedi killer, or Maul, maybe part of the Shadow Collective. We don't know the reference of it all, but she's definitely familiar with who he is in some capacity. We'll learn what that's going to be here at some point. And that really ends that first episode. Before we get into the second one, anything you want to add to those final moments there?
No, I thought that was a very fitting ending to that episode, and it kind of picked up right on in the second episode. So yeah, it was a good ending there, and on to episode 2.
Yeah, let's get into episode 2. So, if you want to take a break, come back. That's fine too. Okay, this will be quicker, I think, because this episode, I like the first one more than the second. If I had to rate them, I would say episode 1 was probably like I'd say maybe a 9 for me, with episode 2 somewhere around like an 8.5 maybe. Where it was like really great, not perfect by any means for all the stuff that we talked about at the top of the hour, but I love both of these episodes. But this one was a little bit not as intriguing for me as the first episode, and we'll get into maybe the reasons here why in a second. But we pick up immediately where we left off, where they're now trying to escape with Vario and Devin en route. So they've got Scorn, and I forget who the other one was, or Icarus maybe, is holding those two, and they're trying to get out of there. The cinematography in that episode is in that first opening sequence is awesome, because if you think about it has that camera like going down the ladder that they're going up or going up on the ladder that they're going down on, if you will. It's a very cool shot is what I want to say. So kudos to, I think it was, who was the director for this one? We forgot to even mention their name. Maybe you can look it up. It's the Hispanic dude. He's got a Hispanic name anyways. And he's done other stuff for Star Wars, but I thought he did an excellent job on this one. I don't know. Dale, look it up. Somebody look it up in the show notes, please, or put it in the chat if you don't mind. But there's some really great scenes where where stuff like that is happening. This is where we finally get into the whole speeder chase thing that goes on, where Maul's team, they eventually blow up like one police speeder that's in pursuit. Master Daki has that incredible moment from the trailer. I call this his Gandalf moment, you shall not pass kind of moment, where he jumps over the side of the bridge.
Director Saul Ruiz.
Saul Ruiz, that's it. Yep. But yeah, I did a great job with the directing on that, and whoever did the cinematography, whether that's him or somebody else, good stuff there. But yeah, let's talk about Master Daki's moment, like his little Gandalf moment, where he just flips over the bridge, and I mean, he lands so hard. They show like his staff go into the pavement, if you will. It kind of cracks the pavement because he lands so hard. But that was pretty epic. I mean, we'd already seen it in the trailer. And so that would be the only thing I was like, oh man, if they really would have held that episode or that scene back and not showed us or given us more of that scene, that would have been pretty epic. But I mean, I'm not taking anything away from the moment. It was a great moment. But yeah, when Maul suddenly sees him and they start walking towards each other, or Daki starts walking up, I thought, holy bananas, we're going to have like a Maul versus Daki fight going on here, but he doesn't. And that was the first time I realized, at least for me, it felt like, okay, this is a little different than Maul. This isn't the bloodthirsty, attacker / assassin, whatever Maul was in episode 1. He decides to back off. Like, I'm not going to take this fight. He definitely wanted to. And I think this is a prelude to something that's going to happen, because we said Daki wasn't going to come out of this series alive. But I was very surprised. Like, it did feel like it was a defining character moment for Darth Maul not to engage in this Jedi, clearly a Jedi that was right there. And I don't know the motivations of that, but maybe that'll come out. But what did you think of all that?
I thought the reason why is because, at least from my opinion, if lightsabers ignite blazing in public like that, it'd be over. There wouldn't be any question. Someone would notify the Empire right away, and boom, we'd have the planet on lockdown, which I do believe at this point in time, in this point of the story, while again, I do think Maul wants to have his revenge against whomever the Empire throws at him. I think he wants his plan to be more in motion before they show up. So in lieu of fighting this guy, lightsabers blazing, he's like, hey, I need to distract him. And what does he do? He uses the Force to pull down a bridge with civilians up there. And of course, Master Diodaki, being the Jedi that he is, has to go and help them versus taking on Maul and versus attempting to rescue Devin. So that he did truly what a Jedi would do, similar to what Yoda did at the end of episode 2, fighting Count Dooku, where, the pillar was about to fall on an injured Anakin and Obi-Wan. He had to stop fighting Dooku, let Dooku escape so that he could save Anakin and Obi-Wan. Similar, this is what Master Diodaki did, is he let Maul go. He let Devin let Maul get away with Devin, because he had to rescue those innocent civilians, and that's exactly what he did. So I think it was a strategic decision by Maul because he didn't want to draw attention and have the Empire show up sooner than he was ready for them to show up.
Yeah. And there's not to wax comic books more, but if you are an avid reader of the comics, you will remember that Vader actually fights Master Infila, who is a Jedi. He was the Jedi combat trainer or whatever. He was like the primary person. In the Vader comics, he ends up fighting Master Infila, and that's whose kyber crystal he ends up bleeding to make the blade that he has in his lightsaber. But Master Infila kicks his butt. Like, it's not even close. Vader is getting his butt handed to him throughout the entire thing. But Vader then uses a dam, and he starts breaking the dam with the Force. And Infila has to make a decision of like, okay, I have to save all these people. I can't allow them to just die because that's what Jedi have to do. And it's only because of that moment that Vader has the upper hand, is able to kill him. So I'd like to think that these are trainings that come down from Sith, but maybe specifically these are things that they've both learned from Sidious, right? And tactics that they've learned from them over the years. But anyways, thought that was a nice little parallel too.
And you say the dark side is stronger.
Yes, I did say that. As much as
they have to turn to tricks and illusions to get the upper hand on a well-trained Jedi.
I mean, it's not a fair fight, that's for sure.
Exactly.
All right. So and the other thing too, so I mean, the use of the Force. So when Lawson sees Daki, he like kind of looks over and he sees him. He's like, "Hey, dude, you okay?" Because I mean, he just sees this little guy with his hands in the air and he's doing kind of weird things, and I don't know, maybe he's not putting two and two together, that suddenly the bridge went up and you've got this guy standing there straining, trying to do something, looking at the bridge.
I think he knows what's going on.
Okay.
And I think he understands, just like Maul does, that, hey, we don't want to draw no attention that we're not ready for. I think Lawson knows exactly what Diodaki's doing. And he's just like, okay, I've seen this before.
We're not going to make a big deal about it.
And we're not going to make a big deal about it. And are you okay?
Yeah. Okay.
And then like Batman, he turns his, Lawson turns his back, and then he comes and he's gone.
He's gone. Yeah.
And like, I hate it when he does that.
Right. And I suspect those two they'll come together. Like, it feels like they kind of alluded to that in the second episode, that they are going to come together at some point and work towards saving Devin or whatever at some point. So that's all going to happen. But okay, so we go back to Maul's hideout. So Devin and Dario, they're unloaded. Maul says he's going to get rid of Dario if it turns out that he's no use, because Rook is like, why are we keeping this dude along? Like, there's no real reason to do that. Maul knows that Devin is a Jedi, so I don't know how that. I mean, he probably senses it. He's not dumb. Maybe it's probably because of his vision that he had as well. But we'll see where that goes. But he says he's going to fashion Devin into the weapon that he needs to seek out revenge. And that's against all the other crime bosses, so the people that betrayed him as part of the Shadow Collective, as well as Sidious. So he kind of calls it out right then and there that, hey, revenge is one of the primary motivators and things that Maul lives for. It's one of it's truly his weakness. And but make no mistake about it, this is all kind of the long game and a means to an end, and that end being Darth Sidious at some point for the things that he did to him personally, but then also what he did to Savage Opress, his brother, and the way he killed him there. Then we get Maul going up to Devin, and he asks her, "Who are you?" I couldn't help but think of The Force Awakens when Rey is asked that same question by what's her name? Maz Kanata. When she's like, "Who are you?"
Kanata,
yeah, right. Same kind of thing there. I'm sure that was intentional, but he locks up Dario in that bigger cell, and he tells her that you have been indoctrinated since you were a child. Now you must adapt, and he locks her up. I think that's kind of like the teaser for him. Like, he's putting that little bug in her ear. Like, this isn't the world you grew up in anymore. Like, number one,
right.
The world you grew up in was kind of a lie. Like, you were meant to believe the things you believed because that's what they wanted you to believe. I'm about to open your eyes to an entire different world, the real world as things are. And now you're going to have to adapt to that because you don't have that anymore, right? You don't have that construct of the Jedi Order available to you. And so now you're going to have to adapt to real world scenarios and what the galaxy is truly like, which he kind of puts a point on there at the very end of that. But it's enough to get Devin thinking about, like, what's he talking about? What do you mean indoctrinated? What do you mean this is not, I've got to adapt to what? Like, what reality is he talking about here? So it's very, very methodical. I love that he's kind of planting these seeds in her mind to kind of fully manipulate her in future episodes. Okay, we go to the Lawson household. We meet Riley, aka Maul's future apprentice. He says he wants to go visit his mom, and his dad Lawson's like, hey, I want to be there with you. It's unclear to me, and we haven't gotten anything in the comic either yet. It's unclear as to whether or not she's just like away, or are they separated? I think the answer is probably more like separation, because he is the token proverbial cop who spends too much time at work and can't get away. And so, his life was his marriage was strained. And so they ended up probably separating or got divorced. And it's clearly having a strain on his relationship with his son, because he's not there to support him in some of the things, specifically Shockball. I mean, that's kind of how I got into it. But, he definitely wants to be there with him when he goes. He just can't find any time to go take him. And so the kid's suffering because he wants to see his mother. And yet and his father, but he can't see either one of them because of the situation that's going on. So, and then of course he gives him hey, I got to go, because Two Boots calls him. He says, we'll talk later, kind of thing. Right. So, if you look at the apartment too, it's kind of in disarray. I mean, there's pizza boxes on there. There's like 4 different like coffee cups there. I mean, there's crap thrown all over. I mean, it feels like this teenage kid is living most of his life by himself as a latchkey kid in the apartment. So it's kind of unfortunate. And again, it plays into my theory, but I think at some point that is going to surface. Like, it's going to have some kind of a purpose later down the road in the series, I suspect.
No, yeah, I agree. It was the typical, like you said, we see it in cop shows all the time where one of the parents is a full-time cop, and it runs their life. It runs family time. It essentially rids it because they're always enthralled in work. And just like you see in other family cop dramas like that, he was trying to connect with his son, and then boom, he receives a call and he has to go. I thought that was a little heartbreaking, because you could see that's again, going back to the animation, and Filoni has always been real good about this, is ensuring that we see the emotions of these characters through their facial features, where they may not say anything, but their facial features, even though they're an animated character, really show how they feel. And I could feel for Lawson's son there. And again, he seems to be a good athlete, so maybe he's gifted, and maybe your theory will pan out. But yeah, that was another good scene in that second episode. Again, Filoni doing what he does best, making sure that emotions are conveyed, even though nothing's being spoken. And I think that was a good example of that.
Yeah. And this the state of the art in terms of the animation has really come away. Like I didn't mention this earlier when we were talking about the animation. Like, there were a lot of moments where you could really see emotions and thoughts being conveyed on the faces of these animated characters. I know they've used a lot of the motion capture. I think like Sam Witwer, he posted something where he kind of drew the markings on his face, because when he was in the booth, he wanted the animators to see that, and so they could map some of the same kind of expressions and get a sense of like where do the tattoos make certain angles and change based on his facial expressions, and they brought that over onto it. So there were a lot of moments like that, especially when that last moment there, when we see Riley as the dad's leaving, and you can see it on his face where he's kind of looking off and then kind of looks down. He's lost in thought. There's more being conveyed on his face than, again, like you said, what's being spoken in a dialogue. And a lot of that, again, is because of the animation and just how clear and clean cut it is. So we go back to the police headquarters, and we have this really quick update on how the investigation's going. Vario's team is not cooperating. They don't want to give any kind of clues as to who did what, or their mouths are shut the entire time. They've got no information on the Shadow Collective. I thought that was another interesting detail, that they have no information on it. So they're at a loss as to what the Shadow Collective is. Two Boots again says, I want to call the Empire. Like, okay, this is now the third time he's saying we should be doing the right thing here. We need to be following protocol. And Lawson says, no, I have another play that I want to do. He's got one last thing. He's like, he kind of says, I'm not ready to. I want to just do one more thing. And we'll see what that is here in a second. So he's not ready to just say call the Empire, but he's not ruling it out either. At least that was my take on that.
Right.
We get to Maul's headquarters next, and they come up with the plan that they're going to take on Krim. So Maul wants to kind of disrupt their spice operations, right? They're all about the spice, and Krim, he wants to plant it so that Krim Margov, whatever his name is going to think that it's Vario. So he's kind of using Vario as the target of all this.
A patsy.
Yeah, as a patsy, right? And when that happens, at some point, Krim is going to want to meet with Vario, and when that happens, Maul will have his opportunity to kill Krim and usurp all of the leadership there within the Pike Syndication or the Pike Syndicate. And then Vario, of course, is scared of Krim. Like he really feared Krim, and he was even telling Maul, like, hey, you don't want to cross this guy. So the Pikes have really gotten a lot of power, but I imagine that's going to crumbling down to once Maul gets involved. We go over to now what I think is a casino. Like we saw this in the trailer, we broke it down. This is another one of those great uses of like the 3D animation and the matte paintings that we saw in the background. It just blends so beautifully, especially with the colors and the palette that they use. But we meet Rena Soul. Again, they don't say her name. This is in if you go to the StarWars.com website, you can learn a little bit about her. There's not much that's said other than she is kind of like this, femme fatale type character that they're introducing here. At the very beginning when they see each other, she says to Catalor, he says to Catalor. So very clearly that they've got some kind of a history there. So I'm not sure if they work together. Maybe I don't know that she was part of the police, but she may have been some kind of informant or somebody that, he certainly trusts with information. She seems to be aligned and in the know of all of kind of the dark, web of what's going on there with the syndicates and who's fighting who and that whole thing. But she does mention that when he asked her, like, what is the Shadow Collective? And she says, well, it's based on Mandalore. It was a bunch of groups of different crime syndicates that came together, all kind of head up by Maul. But then when Maul left, they all went to war with each other and kind of had a peace treaty since then. And then she says she knows who Maul is, but she says that she never made a deal with Maul. So I got the sense that Maul actually approached her at some point. So she had to have been pretty involved in a lot of that stuff. And when the devil came and asked her for, her help, she said no. And said she was saying that she feels very fortunate because she kind of dodged the bullet. And now she's able to kind of live this life that she has now doing, I don't know what it is she does, but she's not involved in all of that. So it was interesting. I don't know how much more she's going to play. They gave her a character poster today, I think on StarWars.com as well. They've got a poster with her on there. So I suspect she's going to be featured more. To what extent, I don't know. I'd like to see her pop up in the comic. Like I'm hoping that maybe the Cantalor, when she says to Cantalor and they're talking about this moment of Cantalor, maybe that's going to be a moment that we see in the comic book, right? That'd be kind of cool if we could kind of reference that,
Yeah, it would be cool.
Yeah.
To get some type of reference to that. And it could be they worked together back when he was a bounty hunter.
Yeah. Sure. That
was
back.
That was the vibe that I got.
Okay.
And so I'm hoping they expand on that because I'm curious to know what their connection is.
From there we go back to Maul's headquarters. And I felt like this second episode, this was probably the better part for me during the second episode, because this is where Maul was really pitching to Devin that, okay, the world as you know it, the galaxy as you know it has been a lie. And here's a heavy dose of reality. He says, he talks about you may leave anytime you'd like. He's trying to tell her, like, you're not a prisoner here. Even though she feels like a prisoner, she's not. And, we know what that comes to be here in a little bit. But he says, I can show you a pathway to power that the Jedi didn't teach you. Times have changed. What does it mean for you to be a Jedi? Guardian of peace and justice in a time of lawlessness. That's important. Like he's really tearing at the fabric of who she is or who she was meant to be. She's supposed to be this guardian of peace and justice. There is no peace and justice. That is gone.
Nope.
So you've stripped that away. He's trying to tell her, look, all that's been stripped away of you. So now who are you? Right? Like going back to the question, who are you? What does it mean for you? How do you identify a Jedi in this age of lawlessness? And he's really trying to paint this is really the beginning, the inklings of him trying to portray the Empire as the true evil, even though he's just as evil, right? He's still up there, but he's trying to make them seem like they are really the big bad guys, and that we need to come together at some point. So he's just kind of laying down that foundational groundwork that he's going to need for a little bit later. And then when she's like, oh, I'm still a Jedi and I still believe in those principles, he's like, if only there were more like you, perhaps things wouldn't be the way they are today. So he's placating her. He's trying to make her feel better about herself, right? So this is all part of, manipulation and grooming that happens with Sith. We've seen it so many times before. She says, I heard the stories. I know who you are, so stop pretending like you care. So she's onto it. Like, she gets a sense, like she's well aware of the fact that he's probably done something like this before. I don't know where that is. Again, I don't know the context, if that was Maul as the Sith, like Darth Maul proper, or this is Maul as part of the Shadow Collective, or this is Maul as part of, during the Clone Wars with his brother and all that, everything going on there. But she knows about him, and she knows that the tactics that he's gone and used before with other people. And then he goes on to say, you're operating under the premise that I am somehow the villain here, but it's not as simple as good and evil. So saying that, look, good and evil don't really exist anymore. Like, everything's kind of blended. We're all in this gray space, especially now with the Empire in power. And he says, how can I prove to you that we're on the same side? And she says, let me out of here. And he says, by all means, leave, Jedi. Like, I'm not holding you. Like, I brought you in here, but I'm not holding you. You need to figure this stuff out for yourself. And eventually she does. I'll table that because I want to talk about that here in a little bit. But again, I really felt like this was a really good conversation. It really started kind of, I think, more of what we're going to see a little bit later. All this is verbal. I think there's going to be a moment where there's more actionable things that happen that really kind of, support a lot of things that Maul says here, and really kind of start to change her perspective and point of view of, like, who am I and what does it mean to be, good when all there is evil.
I hate to say it, but she is completely playing into Maul's manipulation tactics, 100%. I hope that we get a little bit of resistance from her, because if it's this quick of a turn, if you want to say, I think that does that character a little bit. It underserves that character. But we know that because of the trailers and what we've seen so far, Devin and Master Diodaki do get reunited somewhere along the line, and we see him trying to talk some sense into her. So I'm curious to see how this all plays out. But as of right now, I want to say that Filoni, again, animation great, but every time Maul and Devin have these conversations, there's always a hue of red in the scene from a light or from a background. And it's kind of like what we saw at the end of The Force Awakens with Ben or Kylo Ren and Han Solo, when things started to go bad. The light started to drown out, and then everything became red. Well, in their interactions, the whole scene is red, and it kind of engulfs, the dark side, if you want to say, kind of engulfs that whole scene. And it just seems like Devin is buying this hook, line, and sinker. And I hope that we see some more maturity. I don't think maturity is a word, but some way where her personality evolves a little bit, where she can defy Maul and realize that, hey, you're trying to manipulate me. I'm not going to let it. Because, like you said, I believe what you said is that she knows who he is, and she knows how he plays. So for her to kind of like you just keep following him into the lines of manipulation that he feeds her, it's kind of, I would prefer some more resistance. But again, she is young. They do mention a couple times she's very young. So I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt. I just hope that as the series progresses, she shows a little bit more experience and maturity to say, hey, yeah, I know you're trying to manipulate me, and make it a struggle. Don't just fall directly into the dark side,
Yeah. I think the word I would use is restraint.
Yes,
showing more restraint,
exactly,
for what Maul's trying to do, his tactics, his deceptiveness. I think all of that seems good. If it turns out that she does become his apprentice, and starts down the path of the dark side, it's going to happen from a very kind of like crucial moment in her life. And for all Padawans, at least in Star Wars, where this starts is when their master dies. You know, and if the Empire does indeed show up, and when the Inquisitors, well, if and when they do, I should say when they do, because we know they do. When the Empire shows up, and we have Marok, and we have the Crow, the 11th brother, they show up, and they're Inquisitors. And what is the purpose of the Inquisitors? They are there to kill Jedi. So if it turns out that Maul isn't the one that kills Daki, Master Daki, either they're going to do it, or Maul's going to frame it so that to make it look like they did do it. And at that point, I don't know that she's going to have, like, even with all the manipulation and everything going on, it's going to be a very kind of a clear line to point to, okay, they are truly evil. They just killed my master. That's the Empire. The Sith are a part of that. Palpatine is part of that. Maul's trying to take them down. So who else do I have now? I have no other choice but to side with Maul.
She'll have no choice.
Right.
Exactly.
So he's going to do that. He's probably going to, either that's going to happen naturally, or he's going to put her in that position to make that kind of natural conclusion that this is the person that I can trust at this point. And maybe he's not so wrong about some of the things that he's saying. So, but we can talk more about that when we get into, future episodes, of course. All right. So, that whole conversation's going on, and Vario, they get confirmation that Vario's Pike schedule turned out to be true, right? I think it's Rook or somebody kind of interrupts them. And so they're going to go intercept that. And so we cut over to, I assume this is space over Janix. I wasn't really clear on where this was, and it doesn't matter. But the Pikes are trying to get into hyperspace. Well, it would have to be in Janix unless they really had a time jump where they went off into hyperspace somewhere else. But the Pikes are trying to blast off into hyperspace. They've got a ton of credits on their ship, likely have some spice as well. And thanks to Spybot, he's able to keep them from jumping into hyperspace. So he sends, I guess he takes control of the ship somehow, and he takes them over to one of the moons there on Janix or somewhere close by. They land. They've got Rook and all the brothers. They're waiting for them. And I love that fact, though. I love the way that they shot that, where the cargo goes down and then Maul comes up. Right, he replaces the cargo, and like, oh my goodness, here we go. Did you catch too? One of the bounty hunters, one of the Mandalorians, says "as you wish." At some point, I forget what he's saying too, but it's kind of a callback to Boba Fett in The Empire Strikes Back. Right. And Marok says it too in Ahsoka. But anyways, but yeah, the Pike tells him that he tells him, like, you're gonna lose again, like you did with the Syndicate. They're kind of threatening Maul. Everything is now controlled by Mar Krim, and then Maul just slices him in half. Maul style, right? He cuts him down from the waist. But that was a cool shot because it's very brutal in terms of the violence and what Maul does to them. But I love the fact that they gave us that kind of opaque glass of the front of the ship,
from the cockpit
or whatever it was. Yeah. And so you can see the pieces fall off to the side, but you don't get all necessarily the gory and the goriness and the violence of it. So it's still kept at Star Wars, but yet it certainly was the brutality of Darth Maul. So I love that moment. Let's see. One Up versus CP says, it stuck out to me that she never denies being a Jedi to Maul, and all he has to do is go on his vision or whatever. Yeah. She never does say that she is a Jedi or one way or the other. So he assumes that she is, or he says that she is. And I took that to be, well, it's because of, the fact that he's had the vision. That would be the only way I would guess that he's kind of locked in that she is indeed. Okay. And this episode's already kind of wrapping up. So we cut back over to the casino, whatever that is, where, Lawson's leaving now after having spoken to, Rena Sewell, and we see Daki kind of behind him, following him. Then he disappears like Batman, and then Lawson's kind of like, what happened there? So anyways, he jumps in the ship, he takes off, and then we left with that one scene of Daki looking at him. So I assume Daki again is trying to put all this together and try to, he knows he's being drawn. Maybe the Force is drawing him to kind of meet up with Lawson, or knows that Lawson is, the police chief, and that he needs to get Devin back. And he's got the most recent information as to where they went, but it's kind of inevitable. Those two are going to cross paths here very soon. I would assume in the next episode, quite honestly. And then the last moment here, the last scene is where we go back to Maul's headquarters, and Vario is wanting out, like, hey, I gave you good information. Can I leave now, kind of thing. And Maul says that no, he's going to stay there until Krim is dead. So he's still sticking around for quite some time.
Mhm.
As a viewer, I'm happy for that because I think they have some really good moments and dynamics. And we talked about the acting on that. Voice acting is great. And then Maul goes over to Devin, and Maul says it is time for you to view the galaxy for truly what it is, or what it truly is. And then he disappears, which I thought, okay, when that scene came up too, by the way, I just want to say again, it's kind of a small nitpick, but I thought there would be an opportunity to really have some more dialogue there and kind of hit home the message that he gave earlier, and not just say it is time for you to view the galaxy for what it truly is, and then just disappear kind of thing. But anyways, he does disappear. He does. I think also before that, he tells her, like, you're not really locked up here. You can get out whenever you want, kind of thing. And then Devin goes through that whole kind of process where she's trying to use the Force to unlock the prison cell thing. It's like a storage container is what it is.
It's like a container. Yeah.
Yeah. And the audio description, it talks about it being a storage container, but she can't open it from the outside because it's locked. She tries to use the Force, but that doesn't work. And then she realizes after she sits down that there's some space between that, the back wall there and her. And so really, she just needed to use the Force to kind of push away from all of that in order to get away. And so I'm positive there's some symbolism there with how she escapes, using the Force to kind of push away from all that. And that gave her freedom. But and that's how it ends. I assume, like you mentioned earlier, she's probably at this point going to run back now to Master Daki and kind of explain all this, and maybe even, petition him to help her, and that maybe they look at Maul in a different way. And I think he's going to push back and say, no, this is really not, this is Maul just being manipulative once again. That
exactly.
We can't trust him. But overall, the second episode was really good. Not as strong as the first one. Anything you want to say, I guess, on the last piece there, I guess, with, whether it was, whether it was Maul killing the Pikes there at the very end, or with his last interaction there with Devin.
So I think what caught me is how calmly she just kind of walked away. That she used a Force to force open that crack to get out from behind the container versus the front where it was like really locked and secure. She just she made that gap. She was able to get out, and she just calmly walks away. I thought that was pretty telling of where she's at and the confidence that she has. But again, either that or she is walking away calmly because she accepts the fact, or she's beginning to accept what Maul is saying.
Yeah.
And I think the next episode will be interesting to see if that interaction between her and Daki comes up, and he essentially, she tries to plead Maul's case to him. But yeah, I thought it was so telling that after that tremendous feat of using the Force to force that crack open, so she just calmly walks away. So yeah, I'm curious to see what happens in the next episode. There's so many. I have so many questions from these first two. Next Monday can't get here soon enough.
Yeah, I would agree. I was just looking at the stages of the hero's journey, and she's kind of following this pretty closely, actually. She's got the call to action, sort of, just because Maul's around. Supernatural aid's always existent with the Force. She's got the Threshold Guardian, which I would assume Maul. She eventually goes into the belly of the whale, which you could argue is Maul's lair, and then she leaves, and then that she's going to go through the death and rebirth, and then finally go through transformation, atonement, and then return. So I don't know. She seems to be following the hero's journey, which I would suspect if it's Miknovitz and Filoni behind this, they're going to follow the hero's journey because that's the blueprint for a lot of the characters in Star Wars. But it'd be fun to map this out. It's a
blueprint for a lot of Filoni's work.
Yeah, but definitely. It would be fun to kind of map this out from her perspective. I don't know if anybody else is following this. I mean, Maul's gone through the hero's journey like a few times, I would say, at this point. But it would be fun to map that out too. I don't know. Maybe we make that the Patreon show, or we do a special on that too. But it'd be fun to do that maybe after everything's done. We did that with Ahsoka. Because Ahsoka really followed the hero's journey in that first season. So I just want to throw that out there as well, that it does feel like we're following down that path. So thank you, George Lucas, and who was the original guy that wrote that did all that? Joseph Campbell for the hero's journey. But all right, let's kind of wrap this up. I guess give me your kind of final thoughts or anything else you want to add to this before we get out of here.
No, really, there's really not much more to say. I've gushed over, the trailers and the little video vignettes we've gotten way back when they first announced this, which is almost a year ago at Star Wars Celebration Japan. I've been waiting for this, and for me, these first 2 episodes did not disappoint. I thought they were amazing with, like I said, little Nerf Pebble complaints here and there. But no, I think it's an amazing start. Parts of these episodes are the best animation that Lucasfilm Animation has done. Overall, I think it's the best from an animation standpoint that Lucasfilm Animation has done. And the story and the writing and the dialogue, they're all top notch. And it has the potential to be the greatest thing that Lucasfilm Animation has produced. But again, we're early. It's just the first 2 episodes. We still have 8 more we have to work through. So bring them on. I'm ready to go.
Yep, I'm with you there. I was just pulling up the episodes too. So next one is going to be episode 3 will be Whispers in the Unknown. And the next one will be Pride and Vengeance. So, Whispers in the Unknown, Pride and Vengeance. I would imagine after the Pride and Vengeance, oh no, because Inquisition happens after that. That's when those guys show up. So yeah, maybe Donkey sticks around probably till episode 6 or maybe even 7.
I have a feeling that Donkey is going to be around for a minute. I think he may actually survive this thing.
Oh, really? I think he had him. Yeah, go ahead.
Did we have him dying?
Yes. Yeah, I think we both said we had him dying. But if you want to say he lives, then we can say the show was right because one of us will be right.
Yeah, I think that just seeing his character and how his character is playing into the storyline and how Maul has used him so far, I think he makes it through. There is a in a DC comic. I don't remember who it is. It's not the Penguin, but there is a crime boss that constantly gets captured and is called a stitch, but he always ends up back on top of his family. And that's what Vario reminds me of, that one character. Again, it's not the Penguin, and I don't want to say it's specifically a Batman villain, but he always gets the short end of the stick. He's always arrested. He's always incarcerated. He's always the snitch, but he always ends up back on top of his family. So I think Vario would fits that bill, but we'll see. For now, I'm you know what? For now, I'm going to stick with my original that he will not make it to out of the end of this series, but pending future viewings of the future episodes, I want to reserve the right to change my mind.
Right. And you're talking about Vario, just to be clear, not Donkey, Master Donkey.
No, Vario.
Vario. Okay. Yeah, I was talking about Master Donkey. I was saying Donkey was probably going to check out here by episode 7.
No. I think Vario is, and my apologies, I thought we were talking about Vario, but no, I think Vario might actually survive this thing. Well,
I can see that.
I have a feeling, but I'm going to keep my original prediction that he's going to not make it, and let's see what happens these next couple episodes.
Yeah, I can see that too. I think the only thing I'll say is, again, I love the episodes. I had some criticisms about, not giving us details that I felt like were probably important for people to know that you would expect to come out. A lot of that I would say could have been fixed if they just extended the episode a little bit more, gave them a little bit more dialogue to give us that additional contextualization of the characters or names of places and that sort of thing. It's not important because I get it. When you jump into the show, you don't necessarily have to have that because the show just moves at a neck break speed that you don't have any time really to think about that, honestly. So great start to the series. I really enjoyed both of the first and second episode. The one thing that I'm left scratching my head on, and this will, again, not criticism as much as an observation. When you look at the overall narrative and where the stories we think is going to go, although they did say this isn't going to go the way you expect it to. So I just want to throw that out there. They were very clear about that. When I'm looking at what's going to happen and I'm looking at the titles for these episodes, it feels very much like it's linear in the sense that he's going to like the big pivotal moment, at least based on what we know now, is either she's going to join him or she's not going to join him.
Not right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And that seems too basic. Like it seems too simple. And that's not necessarily, again, not a bad thing if that turns out to be the case. But I hope there's more to this than just that. You know what I mean? Like I hope there's more to this story than just him trying to groom and woo her over to become the apprentice, so that we can get into a season 2. And now we have an apprentice, AKA Darth Talon. But I don't see anything right now that looks to be like a total, subverting of expectations, if you will. Right.
Right.
Like, it seems like it's playing along the lines of what we think is going to happen. I want it to be different than that, because otherwise I'm not going to say it's not going to be a bad series. And we've already talked about all the ways that this is a great series so far. But I would like to be surprised, and I don't see any surprises yet. Especially when I'm looking at the title of these episodes and where the trajectory is going right now, but I could be wrong. So hopefully they change that, and hopefully we're surprised. I'd love to see something a little bit more deeper here. Maybe it's Riley. Maybe it's that crazy theory that I've got. I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah. And then again, if we'll have to reach out to Lucasfilm and say, hey, this guy got it. Now send us to the red carpet premiere of Mandalorian Grogu. Come on.
I need royalties. I want royalties more than the
you
fame,
want royalties,
fame
exactly.
and photo ops. I don't need that stuff.
I want to say that I think that something's going to happen. You're right. It would be too basic to hype this show up and just have it follow the linear standard passage. There was a conversation I was having yesterday with other Star Wars fans about how, with the Skywalker saga being over, we need to stop following that same pattern of Star Wars movies.
9. And
we need to go off the beaten path and do something a little different. What you just described there, that linear storyline of the big gotcha is Devin going to turn to the dark side, or is she not? That is obvious. And that, in my mind, follows that same pattern that we've seen through episodes 1 through 9. Yeah. I think that we need to let that go and move to a new way of telling Star Wars stories. And hopefully Filoni understands that, because, he is a disciple of George Lucas. So you got to understand that. But hopefully he understands that these stories coming post Rise of Skywalker, they need to be different. And they were different with some of his other works like The Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett, where it doesn't follow that same pattern of, Lucas's, big quote is that it's poetry, it all rhymes. That was good for the Skywalker saga. We need to find a new way of telling these Star Wars stories. And hopefully that this series will heed that advice that a lot of fans have said needs to happen moving forward to allow Star Wars to evolve.
Well said. I'm looking forward to it. I'd love to see it. Again, I wouldn't hate it if it doesn't, but I'm looking for something new, especially with a series like this. Yep. It feels like this is a good opportunity, especially since this is the first official thing, with Dave Filoni in his position and all the changes that have happened there in leadership. Be a good way to kind of get things off on the right foot and, give us something new, yet familiar.
Of course. Right? Absolutely. So, absolutely.
All right. Well, we'll pick this up, I guess, next week when we get the next 2 episodes. So Whispers in the Unknown, Pride and Vengeance are those 2 episodes. We'll do that show on Monday night next week. And then tomorrow we will come back for Patreon members and do Balance of the Force. So as soon as I'm done editing this, I'll start working on finalizing those show notes. So it should be a fun conversation. So please join us for the live recording if you can tomorrow night, if you're a Patreon member. And let's see what else we got going on. I want to say thank you to everybody that joined us in the live stream. We've got Paisley, Alex was here, JJ Skywalker has come back. Hey JJ, I haven't seen you guys in a while here, man. One Up versus CPU. Jorge Castro is back. I haven't seen him in a while too, but appreciate you being here for the live recording. Riley chimed in here towards the very end. This is like Romper Room where I'm naming people off, and if you know what that reference is, you're old. But Riley jumped in, and then Dale Skywalker jumped in, and then my Star Wars guy. So Rob came in here, clutch at the last minute here, and said, "Great start for the series. Thanks for always for the breakdown." So thank you for you guys for being here. Thank you guys so much for joining us in the live stream. We'll end the show there. And for again Patreon members, we'll see you guys tomorrow. So on behalf of myself and Chris, we will see you guys here on the next episode.
You're still listening? Wow. That's amazing. Well, I'm here to give you the disclaimer. Normally we do a big, long, drawn-out disclaimer thing saying what's what and who's what and all that other stuff, but I think you guys kind of know that Lucasfilm and Disney have no affiliation with us at all, and we have none with them. We talk about Star Wars, which is their property and all that other good, fun stuff, but I think you can tell which is our stuff and which is their stuff. If you can't, well, then send a lawyer to send an email to me, and I'll be glad to chat with them. Other than that, you know what's what, so that's your disclaimer.